Welcome back. Tonight we are going to travel to an island set a little apart, where bells tell time more faithfully than clocks, and where salt wind moves through cloisters that smell of vinegar, juniper smoke, and old paper. Ships arrive with their stories folded in canvas and cordage. The city answers with a gentle, immovable sentence: wait here until we know you better. We won't lean into panic. We'll move at the pace of ledgers and oars. We'll listen to the low thud of waves against quarried stone, the faint clank of a warder's keys, the rustle of a clerk turning a page that has room for many names. You'll watch wool bales opened and aired like picnic blankets in a stiff breeze. You'll see letters held over slow smoke as if the words themselves needed warming. You'll stand under a bell that asks people to eat, to rest, to finish their day. Quarantine is a pause shaped into architecture. It keeps harm out by giving time a place to live. Let's step ashore. You sight the island at first light, a low shape of pale walls and red roofs. A bell tower slim against the morning, gulls writing their shorthand above the water. Your ship already flies the yellow flag, bright as a lemon peel against the gray. It declares what everyone can see, that you belong to the category almost home. A light boat pulls alongside, 2 oars, 3 men, a wooden case. The health officer climbs aboard with a practiced courtesy. His coat smells faintly of vinegar and seawool. He asks the questions that all ships answer: where from, where touched, the health of the crew, the health of the cities behind you. Your captain produces the bill of health, the paper that says, in careful lines, whether your last port was calm, suspicious, or distressed. The officer reads with a finger, not a flourish, and nods to the clerk who writes your ship's name in a neat hand that makes the day real. No one is accused. You are simply assigned a berth near the key, a number in the ledger, a term measured in days longer than your patience, but shorter than your fear. The city has learned that waiting is a remedy, and remedies work best when written down. You are taken in by stages, first the crew, then, if weather allows, the cargo moved by lighter boat to a low arcaded yard where bales and crates will learn the air. The yard smells of salt and juniper. An oven nearby sleeps now, later it will burn slow with herbs and sulfur, not angrily but steadily, as if heat itself were a clerk doing a shift. The island's plan is plain and legible. Dormitories line one court, clean, high-windowed, their floors cool to bare feet. Storehouses open onto another, with long racks where wool can lie open like fields, where silk can hang like pale flags, where paper can stack in prudent towers. A chapel keeps its small light, not to dramatize, but to accompany. A bell in the tower keeps the language of the day. The rules tell themselves without a speech. You are shown to a room and a bed with a frame that creaks like a polite cough. A blanket waits, washed in strong water, dried in wind. A warder points, washing place, latrine, the door that stays locked between bells. You surrender coins to be rinsed, letters to be opened and aired, knives to a drawer where metal sleeps separate from men. It is not punishment. It is a choreography learned by many winters. You wake to the first bell. Dawn air smells of stone and salt. A long table holds a simple breakfast. Bread that gives a clean tear, olives glossy as pebbles, a ladle of warm broth. You eat with people who are not exactly companions and not exactly strangers. Sailors, a merchant, a family who traveled because families do. Voices stay low, as if the island has asked for them. After the meal, the yard begins its slow work. Wool bales are cut and spread, a gray-green tide of fiber that lifts and softens in the light. Men move along the rows at the same pace you'd use to sweep a floor. No hurry, no pauses that invite worry. Silk bundles are untied so fabric loosens like breath. Paper reams are unwrapped and stood on end so edges can learn the air. Then move to a small room where a gentle fumigation begins. Juniper, rosemary, vinegar, and a breathing heat. The door closes, not sealed tight but persuaded shut. The health officer returns with a clerk and a yardstick of attention. He looks at faces, not to interrogate, but to remember. He notes who coughed in the night and who slept through. He notes the temperature of the day. He draws a line in the margin you understand later. Day 1. On a chart pinned to the wall, your ship's name sits beside a column of squares that will be crossed one by one. You glance at the number and discover that even paper can steady you. Waiting here has rhythm. Work in the yard, then rest inside when the sun gets high. Letters are brought back to you with neat slits where they were opened and a faint smell of smoke. You read them slowly, grateful for sentences that have never heard of islands. Coins return dull but honest. Your laundry is taken, boiled, and hung like flags you did not know belonged to you. When you collect it later, it smells of water, not of any promise, and somehow that is best. The guarded distances are simple. You walk beside, not arm in arm. You speak across a measured space. You sleep in a row where the windows are set to invite wind. If someone touches a shoulder by reflex, the hand is replaced as if it were a book put back on the wrong shelf. No shame, only tidiness. At midday, the bell again. Soup thickened with barley or beans, a wedge of cheese, more bread, the tired happiness of fruit. A spoon passes from hand to bowl and back, washed between. The clink of tin is more companionable than talk. Across the yard, a clerk under an awning files your captainess manifest with a patience that makes the afternoon feel shorter. You wander the arcade after, counting columns because numbers make the day behave. The sea answers in the same meter, lap, pause, lap, an instrument tuned to the island's mood. In the chapel, a low voice reads a psalm. In a side room, a boy practices letters, his tongue between his teeth as he makes a neat loop. A small apothecary stores herbs in bottles, not grand but hopeful, dried orange peel, vinegar, a powder you are told to mix with water if a headache insists on speaking. On some afternoons, the oven burns. A warder opens the door a careful inch and the air changes. A dry, clean heat edged with herb sweetness. Cloth is hung in a screened place to receive the warmth. No one hovers. The oven and the air do their shift together. Bales are turned by men who know how to lift without argument. A clerk writes day 8, day 12, day 19 in a book that seems to grow heavier with each ink digit. He does not count toward catastrophe. He counts toward permission. Little privileges appear. A walk to the far wall under escort to look back at the city. A longer time in the yard when the wind is right. A child allowed to feed crumbs to gulls, supervised by a delighted warder who pretends not to be delighted. The island opens its hand a finger at a time, and you learn that relief can be methodical. Evening brings cool stone to the skin. The yard quiets, bales are covered. Racks of cloth are taken in, letters are returned to pockets. A tally of the day's small business is read aloud in a voice meant for ledgers and lullabies. The pen scratches a closing line, all present, bell rung. Work concluded, weather fair. The line is not poetry, but it rests the mind. You lie on a bed that creaked this morning and now holds you as if it were designed for your particular weight. Through the high window, the sky offers the city's scattered lights across the water. The bell sounds a final time, fewer strokes, lower. The warder passes like a wind in human form, checking latches with the same patience he used on the oven damper. Far away, another island answers with its own bell, a conversation made of distance and duty. Before sleep, you rehearse the next day without effort, bell, bread, yard, letters, ledgers, bell. You don't need to believe in anything more than that. The waiting itself is the work. The island understands. It has stood here for years explaining to time how to behave. Tomorrow the yellow flag will still be there, fluttering like a polite hand raised in a crowded room. One day, not soon, but not forever from now, it will come down with the same calm as everything else. A clerk will draw a last line, a boat will push off. The city will open its door. But tonight, the best thing to do is nothing in particular. Breathe with the water, turn on your side, let the bell count for you. Quarantine is not only an island, it is a committee that learned to be patient. In the city across the water, the health board meets in a cool room where shutters persuade sunlight into stripes. 3 officials sit with a clerk whose pen understands iron gall ink and long warnings. On the wall, a chart lists arrivals. On the table, a tray holds seals, wafers, a shallow dish of sand to dry signatures. No one speaks quickly. They have discovered that haste is not a health. Reports arrive from the islands by boat, folded papers smelling faintly of vinegar, lists of names written in a hand that makes each letter stand upright. The board reads them the way a navigator reads depth marks, steady, without argument. A warder's note, cough among the crew, now eased, is filed beside a line about bales spread and letters aired. The board writes one sentence in the margin that governs all the others, continue as planned. Across the lagoon, the Lazaretto keeps its pace. The day you arrived was day 0 in a ledger where every ship becomes a column. This morning is day 7. The island has taught you its grammar bells for meals and rest corridors that turn corners wide doors that prefer to be shut softly but firmly. A yard that moves like a clock with hands made of men and racks in wind. Your ship's story becomes a case study the board could use to explain itself, not for drama, but for clarity. First, the approach, yellow flag up, oars approaching, a courteous inspection. The health officer collected your bill of health and your names. He did not count worries, he counted people. Your captain surrendered letters and coins with a shrug that understood cooperation as a form of speed. Then a berth beside a low key. Ropes thrown, fenders placed. The island accepted your ship the way a careful host takes a coat, without comment, with intention. You slept ashore that first night under a blanket that smelled of soap and wind. Morning brought yard work, bales out, crates opened, silk loosened, paper fanned, wool lifted so air could put its hands where hands had been. A lighter rhythm followed, turn note, your ship's name penciled onto slats that lifted the cargo the way a sentence lifts meaning off its words. On day 3, the oven woke. The warder's keys made their small music, the door cracked, and juniper joined vinegar in the air. Cloth hung in a screened room where warmth traveled slowly through fiber. Letters returned later with a clean slit, and the faintest memory of smoke, like news that had been warmed before being read. Each dawn, a visit, the officer and clerk, a glance at faces, a question asked in the tone used for counting. Did you sleep? Any fever? A square in the column crossed neatly, day 4, day 5, day 6. You began to know these numbers the way you know steps in a stair. A sailor coughed twice on day 7, tea and a longer rest. A line in the margin, the board across the water reading the note and writing their calm reply. Extend observation one day, no change to cargo routine. The island's genius is administrative kindness, tight where it must be, generous where it can be. On day 10, rain stroked the courts. Bales were covered with wax cloth, racks moved under arcades. The bell's schedule loosened by 10 minutes to keep people dry. Waiting is elastic when it needs to be. What does not bend breaks. Day 12 brought the midterm inspection. The officer compared the ledger to the yard. No bales unaccounted for. No crates left asleep under tarpaulin. No names missing at dinner. He initialed a small square with a flourish so tiny only the clerk noticed and smiled. Day 14 dawned with air that tasted like metal turned to sunlight. The oven slept. The yard stood empty, swept. The officer and the clerk came last time, and the book that had held your column filled the final square, completed without incident. The clerk's pen hesitated half a breath, then drew a line under your ship's name, the way a careful person ties a knot. At the boardroom, the papers arrived by boat an hour later. The clerk there reads the same numbers you lived and reaches for the seal. A wafer softens in water, the brass impress presses down, and a small red sun blooms on the page. Pratique granted, permission to rejoin the city's breath. The yellow flag comes down on your ship with the same calm it went up. The island returns your knives, your coins, your letters, and your ordinary pace. The warden shakes hands only now because ritual has finished. He returns to the oven to rake ash and to the rack to check for splinters that could snag cloth next week. The ledger closes, another opens. The bell marks noon, then nothing in particular. That is its favorite thing to do. Your captain signs for his clean bill, folds it into oilskin, and smiles the small smile of a man whose cargo will walk on streets tomorrow. He does not bless the island aloud. He does not need to. The oars in the water say it for him, even strokes, good timing, a wake that smooths itself as it goes. From the city's side, the health board notes that the system has done exactly what it exists to do, turn risk into time and time into permission. No speeches. A new line on the arrivals chart. A fresh pen nib in case the next day is longer than this one. Quarantine is a pause you can touch. Walk an old Lazaretto when the tour has gone ahead, and you'll feel it long arcades that make. Footfalls patient doorways with thresholds gently scooped by years of careful boots, iron rings set into keys where small boats tied their neat knots. The island learned to wait, and the waiting left objects quiet, legible, oddly comforting. In storerooms where wind still threads the shutters, archaeologists find the punctuation marks of trade and health, small things that told bales and crates how to behave. Lead seals from cloth bolts, little discs pinched onto twine, stamped with a city Isa's emblem or a guild's device on one side and a sanitary mark on the other. They read like coins that never wanted to be spent, evidence that a length of wool or silk had passed through official hands and been set to breathe. Wooden tallies and painted tags, numbers in a steady hand, ship names, dates. Some tags are pierced to hang from hooks. Others are split like matchsticks, so merchant and clerk could each keep a half and make them speak to one another later. Rope remnants with a twist of tar, the kind that looped a bale to a rack, then released it without drama on day 14. Even fragments keep the island's rhythm in their grain. Laid on a table with a soft cloth, these pieces make a sentence. Arrived, inspected, aired, cleared. Paper said what to do. Tags and seals enforce the patience. In drawers where humidity is kept polite, curators open boxes of bills of health, folded quartos with margins full of city names, captains, cargo lists, and the small formal adjectives that governed a ship's fate: clean, suspect, foul. The words travel with seals, wax impressed with arms, wafers pressed with lions, signatures that practice steadiness even in high summer. More intimate are the letters, family words, invoices, notes for partners ashore. Many show the unmistakable fumigation slit, a diagonal cut or double puncture that lets smoke and warm air pass through. Some carry a faint discoloration, a patient perfume of juniper and vinegar that lingers centuries longer than anyone intended. You can almost see the clerk turning the stack like a deck of cards, feeding the slits through a box where filtered warmth did its quiet work. Passes and letters sit together because they live together. One taught the island what to do. The other let the city keep loving the people who were asked to wait. The stove rooms are archaeology you can read with your skin. Brick vaults blackened to a satin shine, flue mouths that rise like tidy chimneys within chimneys, iron rails and hooks along walls where cloth once hung to meet the slow breath of herb smoke and dry warmth. You won't find drama here, no scorches from panic, just the lacquer of repetition. In pits nearby lie thin layers the color of tea, sifted ash with juniper berries and rosemary leaves preserved as ghosts of themselves. A conservator lifts them with a brush and a smile. The samples tell time by fragrance. Some islands kept perforated cabinets for small things, letters, packets, purses of coin. pass through warmth the way bread passes by a hearth. Hinges, latches, and the shine where a warder's hand preferred to rest, habit made into metal. Out in the yards, paving stones still carry the practical geometry of airing. Low racks can be traced as lines of post holes, along walls, a terrazzo band where silk frames once stood. In corners, raised grids where paper reams could stand upright and learn the air evenly on all edges. At the quay, you can find the language of arrival bollards worn on the seaside, mooring eyes with a polish you could use as a mere steps that go down into water and even responsible heights, so the lighter boats rose and fell with tide, not with luck. Sieves and trays fill with the daily evidence of a system that fed and steadied people while clock ran, olive pits, fish bones, barley, quiet proof of meals by the bell. Buttons and buckles, a brass thimble, the rim of a pewter spoon that learned the shape of its owner's mouth. Prayer beads lost between paving stones, a cheap ring, a fragment of a traveling game counter, both boredom and comfort in one small disc. Coins dulled by vinegar rinse, some hold to keep on a cord while metal and man slept apart. Each piece is ordinary. Together, they make a life with nothing to hide and nothing to hurry. Archivists rescue register books whose spines have learned to be humble. Open one and you see the Lazarettos heartbeat. Columns for ship, master, cargo, origin, days assigned, days completed. In the margins, the shorthand of an island at work. Bales turned, weather fair. Stove lit at 10. Letters aired. Day 9 extended by 1 for cough. At the end of a column, a red line neatly drawn is the most satisfying mark in the room, clear. On some pages, a practice seal blooms, a clerk learning pressure and ink before touching the document that will let a ship cross back into the city of his breath. Even rehearsals are worth keeping. They find infrastructure, mostly. The bones of administration, drains that teach rain not to meddle, cisterns that make water honest, store thresholds with iron shoes, limewash layers like yearly rings, the rhythm of doors added and bricked up again to improve flow.n. They find cottages for warders, chapels for solace, kitchens with hearths large enough to feed a ledger of names. They find cemeteries, too, kept here with care and spoken of softly, because any place that holds people for long enough must make provisions for every kind of ending. Archaeology treats them as they were meant to be treated, catalogued with respect, visited with quiet, and they find signage without signs, scratches where racks complained, smooth rails where hands paused a lip of stone, polished by baskets coming and going a map of motion, etched by repetition until the building itself seems to remember the schedule. In museums, conservators become translators between paper and stone. A laid seal is read against a guild list to trace a bolt of cloth back to its maker. A fumigated letter slit is matched to box dimensions in a plan. Register's dates are compared to wind logs to explain a pause in unloading. Objects are kept plain on purpose. Labels use the soft rimmer of probability, likely fumigation slit, lead cloth seal with sanitary stamp, airing rack footprint. The power of quarantine's archaeology is not spectacle, but consistency. The more you see, the calmer it becomes. They say that public health once lived in wood and brick as much as in law. Racks and ovens turned policy into air and heat. They say that time, not force, was the medicine, made visible by squares ticked in ink. They say that commerce and caution learned to shake hands, cargo tagged, bales aired, letters slit and returned, captains crossing out days with the same relief as warders. And they say the quiet part, this worked because it was humane. The objects are modest, the rooms clean but not severe, the paperwork careful but not cruel. Waiting was a system, not a punishment. Every system rests on a story it tells itself about the world. On the quarantine islands, the story was quiet and practical. Air can misbehave, people can pass trouble. Time can fix both. Two ways of thinking, miasma and contagion. live side by side like neighbors who share a wall and borrow tools. Stand under the loggia at noon and feel the breeze walk the corridor. Architecture here teaches air to move, high windows, cross drafts, yards that open to the sea. Juniper smoke curls through screened rooms, vinegar wash dampens rags, lime wash brightens walls, a shade that looks like clean breath. This is the language of miasma, the belief that bad air, damp, still corrupted by rot, carries illness. The remedies are sensorial and domestic. Ventilation, doors propped, grills cut high, a plan that makes wind a staff member. Fumigation, juniper, rosemary, lavender, a little sulfur heat slow enough to be thoughtful. Washing and whitening, vinegar, lime wash surfaces reset to first sentences. Sun and space, veiled spread, letter slit, cloth lifted, nothing piled where breath can't pass. None of this is theatrical. It is housekeeping enlarged until it becomes public health. At the same table, another idea kept its ledger, that illness passes person to person, and by things carried clothes, cloth, paper. The island answers with distance and time. Separation, dormitories arranged by ship and status, measured spaces at meal, the soft choreography of not touching. Observation, days in a column, watched without drama. Objects apart, knives in drawers, coins in trays, letters aired, cargo quarantined from hands until its own little calendar ran out. This is the grammar of contact. Slow the human weave until a loose thread can be seen. Inside the chapel, a votive lamp burns with the same patience as the oven's heat. Prayer keeps company with procedure. Neither is asked to leave. A warder carries a bucket of vinegar rags past a priest saying the psalms, the two nod. On festival days, the city may shorten a procession or reroute it to widen the air. Bells still ring, just not for crowds. The point is not to win an argument. The point is to lower risk without scaring the day. Paper acquires a liturgy of its own. Bills of health carry adjectives, clean, suspect, foul that behave like a confessional in ink. Seals are impressed like blessings that can be checked. A clerk's neat hand becomes a kind of prayer, names spelled carefully, dates written as promises, 40 marked out one little square at a time, until quarantena turns from a fear into a finish. The ritual comforts because it is repeatable. Like kneeling, like rising. When the wind is right, doors are open for miasma's sake. When crews change shifts, distances are kept for contagion's sake. Letters are slit for air and set aside for touch. Wool is turned to meet the sun and counted to meet the ledger. The island becomes a compromise you can walk through, air made orderly, people made patient. Officials learn a tone that suits both stories. They speak without zeal. They prefer instructions to explanations. Windows open after breakfast. No shared tools between ships. Bales turned on odd days. Letters returned at dusk. The voice is gentle because gentleness persuades longer. For sailors and merchants, belief isn't a theory. It's a day. You listen to your own breath at night, and you stand where the draft feels cleanest in the yard. You cross out boxes on the posted chart and feel the body relax when ink reaches the last square. You light a candle in the chapel and wipe your bunk rail with vinegar after. You don't call this inconsistent. You call it care. As notions of germs sharpened and the weight of evidence leaned toward contact and microbe, Lazarettos didn't need to change their mood, only their emphasis. Distance and disinfection stayed. Ventilation remained good manners. The island had already prepared for the future without knowing its vocabulary. It simply kept time for people and space for air, two remedies that moved happily into new explanations. When the bell sounds, it doesn't declare doctrine. It marks intervals, eat, rest, air the bales, close the stove, sleep. Each act makes both theories truer. Air becomes cleaner because you opened a door. Touch becomes rarer because you waited your turn. The bell is the island's modest theologian. It tells everyone when to be reasonable. They left us architecture that breathes, paperwork that cares, and a habit of pairing things that used to argue. Incense and vinegar, psalm and policy, open windows and measured spaces. Above all, they left a method. Turn fear into tasks simple enough to do every day without tiring the soul. Quarantine is a conversation between two kinds of urgency. On one side, the prophet clock, quiet but insistent. It ticks in day rates and demurrage, an interest that keeps time even when the wind is wrong. It sits on a merchandise desk as a ledger with lines that lengthen the longer a ship lies under the yellow flag. It lives in barrels built to be sold, in silk box to be opened, and letters that ask when. On the other side, the public health clock, steady and patient. It ticks in observation days and inspection rounds, in squares crossed off on a wall chart, in the bell that tells the island when to air bales and when to let rooms rest. It lives in habits that prefer certainty to speed, in doors that open for air and close for order, in a city that speaks softly but says, not yet. They share a harbor. They learn to keep each other's time. In town, a merchant wakes to the sound of oars and bells and thinks in columns. He knows the day's exchange rate, the price of wool and pepper at yesterday's close, the cost of his ship's idle anchor counted by the hour. On his desk, the bill of lading, the insurance policy, a copy of the bill of health that left a distant port stamped clean or suspect. In a drawer, a letter half written to a partner upriver, delay expected, island rules unchanged, quality to be checked on release. He visits the health office not to argue exactly, but to ask for clarity. A clerk shows him a ledger, day 9, baled spread, letters aired. Oven lit, 2 men resting, no fever. The merchant nods. He does not apply caution, but he respects predictability. If days are counted, they can be financed. If the yard work is efficient, quality can be defended to buyers. The prophet clock, though impatient, understands the schedule. Back at his warehouse, he keeps staff at the ready, not idle, not overmatched. Weighers, testers, a dye house foreman who will examine silk on the first afternoon after release. He writes to customers with language that calms the market's nerves, goods in quarantine per ordinance. Airing ongoing, expected release day 14. The letter is as much for himself as for them. Paper studies both clocks. A captain lives with both clocks in his pocket. His log counts wind and barometer. The island's board counts days completed. He keeps his crew tidy because tidy men are persuasive. He sends a note across water, crew in good order, cough resolved, cargo handled with care, because the city listens better when the tone is reasonable. He knows demurrage like a taste, money owed for time that does not move. He also knows the look of harbor water when panic is near, and he would rather pay time than spill fear. He visits the yard under escort, watches bales turned with care that will pass any buyer's inspection, and begins to plan the unloading sequence so the first carts will leave the quay the hour the pratique seal dries. At night, he hears his crew breathe in neat rows. He hears the bell count sleep into the room. He flips his log closed on latitude, longitude, calm, and thinks, one more day is only one more line. The prophet clock relaxes a notch when the public health clock keeps promises. Warders and clerks are the hinges between clocks. They speak merchant as well as they speak medicine. In the morning, they show the yard to a supervisor who wants to know whether racks are full and air flowing. In the afternoon, they send a note across the lagoon. Bales turned, silk sound, paper aired, day 10 crossed. They do not use adjectives with heat in them. They use numbers and verbs. They track quality while they track health. A damp bale is opened and set near sun to avoid mildew. A complaint about smell is answered with vinegar wash, and another day given to protect the merchant's interest as much as the city's. Quarantine is not hostile to profit. It is a way to protect value from rumor. In the stoveroom, a warder sets heat gentle, enough to please the ordinance, not enough to scar silk. He signs a line that reads oven tended. Letters aired and knows that somewhere a buyer will be reassured by a smell that means a rule was kept. At noon, the health board reads 2 piles, arrivals and petitions. An importer asks for expedited release on account of perishable goods. The board checks the calendar. And the weather log, if the wind has blown honest and the yard notes are clean, they may subtract a day. Not as a favor, but as consistency applied with sense. Another merchant pleads hardship. The board declines gently with a paragraph that names precedent and risk. The refusal is part of the promise that rules will treat small houses as fairly as grand ones, no secret doors through public health. The profit clock complains under its breath. The public health clock keeps the hour. Both continue to tick. In a coffee house, men talk prices and policy. Rumor travels faster than boats. The island is stricter this month. The warder is fond of silk. A new oven has been installed. A broker counters with detail. No, the oven is old. The clerk is simply tidy. The yard has added racks. Throughput is better. Routine starves rumor. Each reliable report a merchant can carry back to his partners keeps panic from setting a market. At the quay, stevedores wait with hooks and shoulders ready. They do not resent the island. They count on it. Nothing is harder to unload than fear. A clean bill and a rested crew make work even. The first cart rattles away the same hour the seal goes down. The second follows with a spacing that makes the warehouse clerk smile. Order across the water. There are losses not borne by balance sheets. A sailor frets about a letter he cannot send until the slit has let smoke through. A family on shore turns their walk by the promenade into a habit of looking toward the island, counting distant windows as if they could count days that way. A child asks why flags must be yellow before they may be gone. Quarantine answers without scolding. Days in a column, food by bell, work that fills hours, letters returned warm enough to feel touched. The island smooths private worry with public ritual. The profit clock discovers that certainty is almost as valuable as speed. The public health clock discovers that communication is half the cure. Together, they make a harbor where ships do not hide their days and buyers do not distrust their goods. 2 ships arrive. One flies a yellow flag and lands straight away at the island. Its bales are opened, aired, tallied. Its crew sleeps by the bell. It loses days and keeps trust. The other skirts the rules, lands goods by night, saves time, and spends it later. Buyers whisper, insurers raise premiums. A small taint follows the cargo like fog. Merchants remember, and so do boards. Over years, the harbor chooses the rhythm that makes fewer stories and more arrivals. At dusk, the merchant closes his ledger with a clean line under expected release tomorrow. The captain watches the bell tower on the island and feels the last watch of waiting. A warder rakes the oven ash, checks the door latches, and initial marks the day completed. The board's clerk pins today's arrivals to tomorrow's agenda and blows out a candle that has read a lot of patient handwriting. 2 clocks, 1 harbor. The profit clock will start early. The public health clock will be on time. The water between them keeps their faces shiny. The city, which belongs to both, sleeps. The architecture has changed, the rhythm has not. We still turn fear into tasks and write time down until it behaves. Step into an airport concourse at dawn, and you can feel a Lazarettos' manners and new materials. Glass replaces cloister, HVAC replaces arcades, but the air is taught to move all the same. There are lines on floors that keep bodies in measured distance. There are thermal cameras that watch foreheads the way a warder's hand once felt for heat. There are health forms that fold travel into paragraphs, then to databases that prefer neat fields to rumor. At a seaport, the old language still speaks. Ships request pratique by radio. The yellow Q flag rises or falls as a sentence in cloth. We ask permission to enter, we declare our health. Inspectors climb gangways with tablets instead of ledgers, but they ask the same quiet questions. A clean bill still feels like a door opening. We keep the same books in different binding. Passenger locator forms, test results, clearance emails. They are today's folded quartos. A dashboard draws squares and pixels rather than ink. Days completed, contacts traced, tests returned. The column fills, a case closes. A small thrill of relief travels along the same path as a red line under a ship's name once did. We learned new words, disinfection, filtration, UV, but the gestures are familiar. Ventilation is our modern juniper smoke. We measure air changes, we open windows, we add filters that hum softly in the corners like polite machinery. Fabrics meet warmth in laundry cycles that promise temperatures instead of herb lists. Letters become parcels, a conveyor belt and a sprayer do what a slit in a smoke room once did. The scent has changed. The kindness of caution has not. When hotels became quarantine spaces, they learned the bell's old voice. Meals appeared at the same hour. Door handles learned not to share. Trash went on its own small journey. A knock meant check-in more than interruption. Corridors became measured air. Rooms became time. Staff moved like warders with softer shoes. Clipboards replaced by handhelds. Vinegar by disinfectant. The same tone that makes rules feel like care. On ships, cabins learned to be patient. Deck walks were scheduled like yard time. Laundry cycles sang the routine. Announcements counted days in the gentlest arithmetic. Day 6 completed. Tomorrow's check at 9. Even at sea, distance and air were the remedies. Where a clerk once wrote, Day 9, bales turned, men well. A modern tracer types met at table 3. 10 minutes, masks worn. The cadence is the same, verbs, times, places. A case becomes a column, contacts become rows. The end of the sheet is a clearance note. The work remains politely relentless. The point is not to catch someone, it is to complete the sentence. We know more about germs now, but our fixes still honor air and touch. We improve ventilation and filtration for the sake of the room. We wash hands and keep distance for the sake of one another. Incense becomes CO monitors that blink when air has grown tired. Vinegar rags become sanitizer pumps you pass without thinking. The compromise is still walkable, doors open for air, space given for people, time allotted so both can work. Boards once defended the rule that a small house and a grand one must face the same number of squares. Today we call it equity, guidance written for everyone, cues that respect turn, relief that meets the most tired first. The harbor's 2 clocks, profit and public health, still share a wall. Tactful policy lets both tick, schedules announced, audits done, appeals heard, exceptions rare. We still use signs to lower rumors' temperature, posters that explain error, and timing, quiet updates that trim panic into paragraphs, maps that show where resources are and when. The most persuasive message has not changed, a routine someone can keep. Open windows at 9, lunch alone today, tests on Tuesdays. It sounds small. Small is the point. At home, the Lazarettos ethics live as chores, change filters, crack a window, label the freezer, keep a small log of what matters to you. Permission to rest arrives as checkboxes, alarms tested, medicine stocked, neighbors' numbers saved. Paper still makes courage tidy. Sometimes you still see it, a square of bright cloth at a mast, a handshake in fabric between ship and shore. It reminds us the old language never left. It just learned new grammar. Pratique is now an email, a form, a green tick. The feeling is the same. Welcome back. The quarantine islands taught us a temperament, gentle firmness. It lives in airport queues that breathe, in harbors that explain themselves, in schools that open windows, in offices that stagger starts so buses have room for air. It prefers instructions to arguments and schedules to speeches. It asks for patience and pays it back in permission. When the day has done its counting, a bell somewhere, real or imagined, still rings, not to warn, to release. Doors open. Flags come down. The city inhales. Listen, just for a moment, to the island breathe. The bell has finished its work. The oven is dark. Racks are empty and swept. The ledger lies open to a page that smells faintly of ink and salt, a neat red line under the last ship's name. Wind threads the arcades the way a careful hand threads a needle. Doors, politely latched, answer with small wooden vowels. Across the water, the city glows like a patient constellation. Quarantine was never a story about fear. It was a story about time arranged, days converted into safety by rooms that knew how to wait. We watched boats arrive under yellow squares of cloth. We watched warders count calmly, clerks write carefully, cooks ladle out meals that turned clocks into comfort. We followed wool into clean air, letters through warm slits of smoke, and names across a grid where each small square meant not yet now. We met the people who kept the pace humane, the board that preferred promises to speeches, the warders who spoke in verbs and numbers, the captains and merchants who learned that certainty can be almost as valuable as speed. We opened the drawers where quarantine leaves its proof, with seals, painted tags, ash that still remembers juniper, and we walked the courtyards whose stones taught air its manners. We listened, too, to the quiet debate that lived on those islands, miasma and contagion, incense and vinegar, prayer and paperwork, neighbors sharing a table, each helping the other be reasonable. The map has changed since then, but not the temperament. Airports breathe like cloisters. Ships still ask pratique. We still write time down until it treats us kindly. Ventilation is our new juniper. Spacing is our new ledge. A green tick on a screen is a modern seal that says what a red wafer once said, "Welcome back." If you close your eyes, you can hear the rhythm the islands taught. Open, wait, release. It is the same rhythm that lets a mind drift towards sleep. Open the window of thought just enough for air. Wait while the day's cargo, news, errands, worries, lies out where the wind can touch it. Then, when the last square is crossed in your own small ledger, release yourself to the harbor you keep at home. Let the bell in your head ring once softly. Kitchens go quiet, papers stack themselves into order, keys settle in their bowl. You do not need to manage the whole night. The night has staff. Air will move without your supervision. Time will count itself. Somewhere beyond your room, there are still islands that keep watch for the rest of us. A clerk initials a page, a technician checks a filter, a harbor pilot lowers a flag. These are ordinary endings, which is another way of saying they are the kind that make mornings possible. Breathe in, long and even, as if crossing an empty yard. Breathe out longer still, as if setting a door gently into its latch. The ledger is complete for today. The city's waiting room has closed on time. Until next time, good night and sleep well.